You might remember back in 2004, November 1st, 2004, Al Jazeera released the full transcript of a videotaped message from Osama bin Laden that they had played portions of a few days earlier. This tape now came out just before, immediately before, the 2004 elections in this country. This is the tape that John Kerry says may have cost him that presidential election. In that message from 2004, Osama bin Laden stated very clearly what al-Qaeda wanted to do. He said, quote, "We are continuing this policy in bleeding America to the point of bankruptcy. We, alongside the Mujahideen, bled Russia for 10 years until it went bankrupt and was forced to withdraw in defeat." Talking there, of course, about Afghanistan. Now, granted, this could be disinformation. This could be what Osama bin Laden wanted us to think his goal was. But this strategic message is, even with that caveat, worth considering. He continued, quote, "All that we have to do is send 2 Mujahideen to the furthest point east to raise a piece of cloth on which is written al-Qaeda in order to make generals race there, to cause America to suffer human, economic, and political losses without their achieving anything of note other than some benefits for their private corporations." Osama bin Laden in 2004 said his tactical goal was to distract the United States from pursuing our own interests and force us instead to spend ourselves into oblivion in a futile effort to try to stop anyone from using terrorist tactics against the U.S. And bin Laden said at the time that al-Qaeda were pretty delighted with the way that President Bush had chosen to fight them. Quote, "It's been easy for us to provoke and bait this administration. The darkness of black gold blurred Bush's vision and insight, so the Iraq war went ahead, the death toll rose, the American economy bled, and Bush became embroiled in the swamps of Iraq that threatened his future." And that's Osama bin Laden speaking in 2004. Part of asymmetric warfare, a small force taken on a large force, is that the small force always wants to force the big guy to fight on the little guy's terms. Forces large and small, of course, tend to win when they fight on their own terms. Even in sports, right? The University of Alabama would very much like to have the ball as much as possible in Heisman Trophy winner Mark Ingram's hands. Those would be the terms of the University of Alabama on the football field. Anybody playing them, say Texas, wants to fight on their own terms, which tonight at least include keeping Mark Ingram buried under a large pile of linemen at all times. President Obama clearly wants to fight this asymmetric war against al-Qaeda on American terms, not on al-Qaeda's terms. But when you listen to what their terms are, forcing American generals to race across the globe, bleeding America to the point of bankruptcy, distracting us from our own interests, and forcing us to address the provocation that they provide, are we still fighting on their terms, like we did in the Bush administration that so delighted them? Or are we fighting on our own terms now?
Our new approach in Afghanistan is likely to cost us roughly $30 billion for the military this year. Even before the Christmas attack, we increased investments in homeland security and aviation security. This includes an additional $1 billion in new systems and technologies that we need to protect our airports.
The President went on today to describe even further technological investments he wants the nation to look into making in terms of our transportation security. In 2004, Osama bin Laden was delighted with how the fight against America was going, how much military and economic pain America was willing to inflict upon ourselves in response to their relatively cheap provocations. 5.5 years later, is President Obama still following the al-Qaeda plan of how to deal with terrorism? Are we still fighting on their terms? Or is there a way to respond on our own terms in a way that's both effective and that prevents them from getting what they want? And if there is that way to fight them, have we started to find it? Joining us now is NBC News terrorism analyst Evan Coleman. Evan, it's good to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
I know that in your research, you follow online al-Qaeda and jihadist discussion forums very closely. Is it their goal, now in 2010, is it their goal to get us to fight them on their terms?
Yeah, I think it's called al-Qaeda's endgame. That's the problem, is we keep looking in the short term what they're trying to do to us right now, but we're not trying to understand how this fits into their larger philosophy. Just a few days ago, one of the participants on al-Qaeda's main discussion forum posted something online titled, "The CIA has dug the grave of the Americans in Yemen." And basically what it was stating is that aside from the idea that the United States is now going to send troops to Yemen and become embroiled in a conflict there, the other idea is is that with a guy who meant nothing to al-Qaeda, Abdul Muttalib, someone who really is very easily replaceable from their context, they have managed to cause the entire TSA system to go into chaos. I mean, really chaos. They have caused us to throw up our hands in a frantic bid to try to stop people from bringing bombs on airplanes smuggled in their underwear. And the idea is that we can't do that. We cannot stop every single would-be terrorist from boarding an airplane. It's not going to work like that. It's exactly as President Obama stated. It is a siege mentality that will not work. If you want to spend money effectively, you have to look at what al-Qaeda's endgame is. And al-Qaeda's endgame is trying to get the United States entangled in conflicts that we cannot win and spending billions of dollars to secure ourselves against shadowy threats that we can't see. And the reality is that one terrorist buried amongst millions of airline passengers is a needle in a haystack. It is not something that we should expect to find with TSA regulations. We could hope to find it, but we shouldn't expect to find it. The way we should expect to find terrorists is by sinking money into doing proper intelligence work, and obviously not the kind of intelligence work that our agencies have been up to lately.
Evan, it is because al-Qaeda has been so overt about what you say is its endgame. It's easy to identify what it is that they want us to do, what American strategic mistakes are in terms of responding to terrorism. It's not easy to identify the exact right things to do. And obviously, increasing our intelligence capacity is something that every American wishes for. But what are the concrete things that we could be doing differently that we're not doing? And why aren't we taking steps that would increase our intelligence capacity?
Well, first of all, going into Iraq was probably a bad idea. However, as a result of the war in Iraq, we have learned a couple of lessons about what works and what doesn't in terms of driving people away from al-Qaeda. One of the things that really helps is to highlight the fact that al-Qaeda is killing Muslim civilians by the hundreds. Far more Muslim civilians die at the hands of al-Qaeda than Americans do. But that fact seems to have escaped people. I mean, that's not something our State Department is really impressing upon people. The idea that al-Qaeda's main enemy are moderate Muslims. You know, those are the people that al-Qaeda is really going after. Frankly, we've done a terrible job getting our message out. We've done a terrible job managing what the purpose of this conflict is. And as a result, we are perceived in the Muslim world as crusaders, as people who are coming in to occupy Muslim lands. And that's why you see young Muslims, deluded young Muslims perhaps, but deluded, but still they're going out and they're joining these organizations, even independently.
Evan, specifically on that issue, I was struck today that the president brought up that exact issue, talking about the fact that al-Qaeda offers nothing to the Muslim world and that they have killed so many innocent Muslims. He brought that up immediately adjacent to a point about how he is directing American security against the threat of lone terrorists, they said, to address the unique challenges posed by lone recruits. What's the connection between those two things? The idea of al-Qaeda in the Muslim world not being a friend or offering any realistic vision to Muslims, and lone terrorist recruits being the threat to us now?
The answer is that most people that are joining terrorist organizations today are not doing so because Osama bin Laden calls them on a telephone and says, come join us. That's not how it works. These guys are very angry, and they've been mobilized by what they see on television and what they see in al-Qaeda propaganda. And despite the fact that they may be one person living in a community where nobody else supports these ideals, as a result of the internet and as a result of social networking forums, these guys go online, they find other people who share these beliefs, it becomes an echo chamber, and after a while you have a group of people that honestly believe that the United States, the primary goal of the United States, the U.S. military, is to kill Muslims for no reason. And we're doing really not very much to counter that message. And if you want an answer as the proof to that, look at what happened at the CIA base in Khost in Afghanistan, where 7 CIA employees lost their lives because of the fact that we trusted the wrong guy, someone who was going on the internet and proclaiming, I will never give up these beliefs. I will never surrender these beliefs. They are in my heart forever. He was saying this as of September of 2009. How come the CIA didn't pick up on that? How come they didn't realize what those words meant? That's how you stop terrorism.
NBC News terrorism analyst Evan Coleman, your insight on this is, I have to say, leagues ahead of what's going on across the mainstream media tonight, and multiple leagues ahead of the way most politicians are talking about these issues right now. We're really grateful to have you on the show. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks.